This is having to do with Sefer Malachim. I wish I had a blackboard here. You guys know about the progression of the kings in what do you call it? In the 10 tribes in the Davidic dynasty, first temple times? It goes like this. King Yehoash of Yehuda took the throne as a child at 6 years old. Same time, it was he was 7. And at the same time, it was the 7th year of Yehu, who had basically led the coup that destroyed the house of Ahab. And that's why, Yoash's own father, Achaziah of Yehuda, was dead. He was killed by Yehu along with his uncle Yehoram, who was king of Israel. So everything starts from that point. Yehu was already a somebody when he took the throne. It says that when he became king, he told his number 2, Bidkar, says, do you remember, Yehu was Achav's general, basically. He was all the time when they picked a new king in the 10 tribes, who they usually go for? It was the general, the top guy in the army. So Yehu was the top guy in the army. He led the armed forces. And the number 3 was Bidkar. And he says at the time they killed Yehoram and his mother, Jezebel, he says, do you remember when we were riding in a pair behind Ahab, because they were the number 2 and number 3, they rode directly behind Ahab as king. He was already Ahab's number 2 when Ahab was alive. And this whole coup happened a dozen years after Ahab died or was killed in battle. So Yehu says, do you remember when we heard Eliyahu Navi say this very nevuah? We were there when Eliyahu Navi said this to Ahab, and now it came true. So Yehu took the throne. He wasn't a youngster. He was already a significant adult. His counterpart in Yehuda is just a kid. So it makes sense that Yoash would live through Yehu's reign and the reign of Yehu's son and the reign of Yehu's grandson. Yehu's line goes Yehu, Yehoachaz, Yehoash, Yoravam II, Zechariah. One more time. Yehu, Jehu, Jehoahaz, Yehoachaz, Yehoash, like Joash, just like his counterpart in Jerusalem, has the name Joash or Yehoash or Yoash, Yerovam II, and Zechariah. That's the Yehu line, 5 kings. And Yoash's son was Amaziah. Amaziah's son was Uzziah. His son was Yotham. And during that time, basically, those 4 kings of Judah are going to see the end of the Yehu line. The Yehu line will basically conclude in Uzziah's time, the 3rd king. So you look at this, Yoash was assassinated. He went off the derech in his older age. Whatever it is, Chazal say it's because people deified him. You slept in the Kodesh Kodashim as a child for 7 years and you didn't die? Wow, amazing. You must be a god or have God's favor somehow. So he was assassinated, but the people quickly put his son, Amaziah, on the throne. Amaziah took the throne at the age of 25, reigned for 29 years. Let's just work with Pshat. Amaziah had also a fatal flaw, and I will not judge these kings. I'll just tell you what the Navi says, that he did get a haughty heart, and he challenged Yehoash of Israel to a fight. He had a bone to pick with him. He felt that his mercenaries were not good enough. They had done the wrong thing. He wanted to settle the score. And Yehoash, the 3rd king of Yehu's line, told Amaziah, you really shouldn't pick a fight with me. You're a nothing. You think because you beat the Edomites once that you could beat me. Go home and you'll be safer for it. And that wasn't good enough for Amaziah, and they had a fight. They had a battle in Beit Shemesh, and it says, Vayinachef Yehuda. Yehuda lost big time. And Yehoash of Israel captured Amaziah, brought him back to Jerusalem, took all his money. It says he took all the Otzros Beis Hashem and all the Otzros Hamelech, and he made a big breach in the wall of Jerusalem and left. He also took the Bnei Taruvot. He took hostages, and that was it. Amaziah himself was then assassinated sometime later, assassinated by certain people. And once again, the people put his son on the throne. That was Uzziah. And Uzziah took the throne at the age of 16. Yet we then see the next generation, Uzziah has a very long reign, 52 years, and he gets along well with Yehoash's son, Yerovam II. Yerovam II is the greatest of the kings of the 10 tribes, reigns for 41 years. Remember, what does it mean when someone reigns for 40 years in the Torah? What does it mean, 40 years? That's usually a magic number, perfect kingdom. Moses is ruler for 40 years. David and Solomon rule for 40 years. Asa is king for 40 years. They're all righteous. After Deborah defeated the Canaanites, Yavin Melech Canaan and Sisera, it says, Watishkota Aretz Arba'im Shana. After the first batch of great judges, it's always multiple of 40 years. Osniel ben Kenaz, 40 years. Ehud, 80 years. Okay? Deborah, 40 years. Gideon, another 40 years. But it's always 40 years. So this king of Israel reigns for an unprecedented 41 years. And it says that he restored the boundaries of the land of Israel to the way they were in King David's time. Everything became good again. Like Rabbi Victor Miller says, it was God's last chance. Will the Israelites repent out of goodness when things are good for them? And what happens? Interestingly enough, he apparently gets along well with his counterpart in Judah, Uzziah, and even returns some of his lost territory. So things are good now. Whereas their fathers were fighting, these two kings get along well. It's a time of unprecedented prosperity, like I said, mid-First Temple times. But after this, Zechariah is going to be assassinated, and it's only going to go downhill for the 10 tribes after there. So my question is twofold. It says that Amaziah reigned at the age of 25 and reigned for 29 years. When he was assassinated, his son took over at the age of 16. I would think that if the man reigned for 29 years, maybe he had a son. In the olden days, these kings were polygamists. Solomon's own heir was born a year before Solomon took the throne. That's simple math. You could say. It says Rechavam was 41 years old when he took over the throne from his father, reigned for 40. He was born a year before his father took the throne. The Gemara talks about how King David was proud of his grandson Rechavam and had him on his lap. So these kings were familiar with their own successors and their successors' successors. How is it that a man who took the throne at the age of 25 and reigned for 29 years, died at 54, only had a son to take over who's 16 years old? He didn't have any sons before that? He only had a son at the age of 43? Yeah. Pshat. Yeah. Yes, we're dealing with Pshat. Yeah, and the Radak, especially Radak, who points out that seems to be Pshat. And not only that, this king gets along very well, fantastically well, with the man who basically brought about his own father's downfall, the son. So the sons get along. Yeravam II and Uzziyahu both reigned for very long, decades and decades together. Time of prosperity for both Judah and Israel. But their fathers went to war and seem to have not gotten along with each other at all. So my question is, why did Amaziah have such a young heir? Where was any of his other children? And how is it these two men got along so well? And here's the answer. It's alluded to in a grammatical point over here. B'nai Ta'aruvot. What is B'nai Ta'aruvot or B'nai HaTa'aruvot? It says that Abraham had B'nai HaPilagshim. The Pilagshim, the final bottom line shot of Abraham's sons, the B'nai Keturah, is that B'nai Pilagshim means the sons who are not of the Gevira. By the way, can we put away the hummus and the other thing? Yeah. The sons who are, please take whatever it is, just let's put away for the next guy. The sons who are not the main heirs. It doesn't mean they had multiple Pilagshim. That's a term. B'nai Pilagshim, just because Pilagshim is plural doesn't mean that there's multiple Pilagshim involved, concubines. It just means these sons who are the lesser sons, second-class sons, B'nai Keturah. What is B'nai Ta'aruvot? All the Mefarshim say it means the hostages. But who are the hostages? B'nai Ta'aruvot means in the olden days, and by the way, maybe even today, I'm sure Putin has this also. What is it? The king, in order to make sure that his sarim, that is the high-ranking officials in his kingdom, whatever you call them, the princes, the officers, the dukes, in order to make sure they do not rebel, he has their children as hostages. That is B'nai Ta'aruvot. Make sense? Now, wait a minute. Are you telling me that Yehoash, when he conquered Yehuda and captured Amaziah, took the B'nai Ta'aruvot that Amaziah had? It says he took the B'nai Ta'aruvot. And then you just read in Farsi, you say, it means the men that Amaziah kept as hostages said his own sarim would not rebel against him. That cannot be pshat there. It cannot be that Amaziah had the sons of the top men in the Jewish kingdom as his hostages. Why? Because we just read before. It happened many times. Rav Miller points this out also. We saw that Jewish kings had been assassinated. Yoash was assassinated. Amaziah was assassinated. And other kings died early. It says that the people made sure to put their sons on the throne. There was never entertained in the entire history of the Davidic dynasty in the First Temple that someone would have the chutzpah to put someone who is not the rightful Davidian heir on the throne in the land of Yehuda. No such thing. We saw it right there. Amaziah himself was assassinated. his loyal people put his son on the throne. So Amaziah would not have to take hostages from his sarim to make sure that he would have their loyalty. Rather, what means that when Yoash took Bnei Hataruvot from Amaziah, it means that Yoash took Amaziah's children as Bnei Ta'aruvot. He took Amaziah's children as hostages because Amaziah challenged him to this fight. He beat Amaziah. He took all of Amaziah's wealth. He breached his city's walls, and he went home. It means to make sure that Amaziah would not rebel against him now and not start up again, he took Amaziah's children. And that's why you do the calculations. This happened 16 years before Uzziah took the throne. That is, Uzziah was Amaziah's son, born right after his encounter with Yehoash and Yehoash going home. So now what happened? That's what Pshat and Bnei Atah wrote, even though the Mefarshim just explained to us what the term means. But it doesn't mean Amaziah held Bnei Ta'aruvot from his own people. It means Yehoash took Bnei Ta'aruvot of Amaziah to keep Amaziah in line. So now we understand why did Uzziah take the throne at such a young age? Because all his older brothers, who were potential, candidates for the throne before him, obviously, were gone. They had been taken away into captivity. So wait a minute. Why does Uzziah get along so well with his counterpart in Israel, Yerovam II? Because Yerovam II grew up with Uzziah's older brothers. Yoash took Uzziah's older brothers as captives, as hostages, even before he was born. So there was a brotherly connection between these two men. Uzziah grew up, Yerovam II grew up with Uzziah's brothers in the house. So this incident basically brought about inherent closeness between the two kings. That answers the questions, and And if you want, I'd be happy to show you the psukim that prove this point, that there's no reason why the kings of Judah needed to take hostages from their sarim in order to ensure their loyalty. Because we already see many, many examples that Dafka, there was no such thing as putting someone else on the throne in the land of Judah. There was never a Havamina. Not like in the 10 tribes where if a king was assassinated, then what? The assassin basically took over. Happened too many times in their history. Okay, that's enough for this. Let's go into the Rambam. I'm sorry for those of us tuning in at home, but I think that these are important points that need to be made because people understand them. People are asking, what is the Bnei Ta'aruvot? It does mean exactly as Mefarshim say, but you have to understand, but who were the Bnei Ta'aruvot? Whose kids were they? And that explains why it is Uzziah took over at such a young age, so it's good. It's kind of interesting. In the olden days, and even at least in the early 20th century, what would they do to create alliances? You'd have youngsters get married to each other. This king's son. The whole thing that brought about the whole peace between Yehoshaphat and Achav was that sometime during the reign of Yehoshaphat and Achav, a marriage took place. Yehoshaphat's son, Yehoram, married Achav's daughter Athaliah. You do the Chazal say this, but this is a little bit inaccurate. You think this, it says Omri and Asa arranged the marriage. It says that, how did Omri take the throne? It says that there was two rivals for the kingdom of Israel. There was Omri and Tivni ben Ginat. It says Tivni died and the people chose Omri. He was the popular choice. They say why? Because allude to Psukim that Asa, the king of Yehuda, intervened and basically said, I like this guy. He's my choice. We will arrange a marriage between our children. More accurately means our grandchildren. Not only that, you look at the age of the grandchildren. I showed this to a guy a few years ago. You look at it. It means they arranged the marriage. The marriage only took place after both of these kings had died. The marriage took place in the days of Yehoshaphat and Achav, their sons, respectively. So Asa and Omri arranged the marriage. He said, my grandson will marry your granddaughter when they come of age. And they only came of age once the sons were on the throne. That's why it says Yehoshaphat made peace with Ahab. What do you mean? Chazal say Omri made peace with Asa a generation before. No, the marriage took place during their reigns. That's how it works out. And that marriage produced King Achaziah of Yehuda. It says Yehoram went off the derech already. He was Yehoshaphat's son. Yehoram of Judah, he went off the derech. Why? Because Bat Achav haita lo li isha. the daughter of Ahab was his wife. That was just like bad. Okay, that's Athaliah, Atalyah. She eventually killed all her children when she saw that her oldest son had died. Achaziah was assassinated by Yehu along with his uncle Yehoram, a different Yehoram, Achav's second son Yehoram. And she said, well, might as well ensure my own place on the throne by killing all my relatives, killing all my husband's family. It nearly worked. It was a good plot. I don't think she was thinking about, so who would succeed her? If she killed all her surviving children, including she nearly tried to kill her last grandson, she wasn't really thinking ahead. She was thinking really selfishly, by the way. So this whole incident, whatever it was, it led to a situation which was a blessing and a curse. There was peace between the 10 tribes and Yehuda, unprecedented time. Since the time of Rechavam, they had been at war with each other, border disputes. They never got along. It had been like that for 50 years, more than 50 years, basically 60 years almost. And then things changed. And it was good for 20-something years. What changed? The fact that the royal houses married into each other. And that is the thing that you've seen, and also they used to practice in Europe. They explain Solomon made a lot of these political marriages. You get along with the foreign kings if you have a marriage going on. So in this case, what we see with Yeravam II and Uzziah of Yehuda, it's not less a marriage, but more like a connection, a brotherly connection, because his brothers became his adopted brothers. They grew up. Okay.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.